Paramahansa Paravadikacharya Sutta Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBD Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 6, Text 29. Tartiyena swabhavena. Tartiyena swabhavena. Bhagavan abhimashritaha. Bhagavan abhimashritaha. Ubayor antaram vyoma. Ubayor antaram vyoma. Ye rudra parshadam gantaha. Sorry. Ye rudra parshadam gana. Tartiyena swabhavena. Bhagavan nabhimashritaha. Ubayor antaram vyoma. Ye rudra parshadam ganaha. Vaishnavis. Dartyena, by excessive development of the third mode of material nature, the mode of ignorance. Swabhavena, by such nature. Bhagavat Nabim, the abdominal navel of the gigantic form of the personality of Godhead. Ashritaha, those who are so situated. Ubayo, between the two. Antaram, in between. Vyoma, the sky. Yea, all of whom. Rudra Parshadam, associates of Rudra. Ganaha, population. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Living entities who are associates of Rudra develop in the third mode of material nature, or ignorance. They are situated in the sky between the earthly planets and the heavenly planets. Purport. The middle portion of the sky is called Bhuvar Loka, as confirmed by both Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti and Srila Jiva Goswami. In Bhagavad Gita it is stated that those who develop in the mode of passion are situated in the middle region. Those who are situated in the mode of goodness are promoted to the regions of the demigods. And those who are situated in the mode of passion are placed in human society. And those who are situated in the mode of ignorance are placed in the society of animals or ghosts. There are no contradictions in this conclusion. Numerous living entities are distributed all over the universe in different planets and are so situated in terms of their own qualities in the modes of material nature. Om Agina Timiram Dasha Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamrupakara Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam. So does anybody know what Bhagavad Gita verse Prabhupada might be referring to here in the purport? He says, because he says in the second sentence, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that those who develop in the mode of passion are situated in the middle region. Those who are situated in the mode of goodness are promoted to the regions of the demigods, and those who are situated in the mode of ignorance are placed into the society of animals and ghosts. 14, close. That's it, 14, 18. Ordvam gachanti satvashta maje tishtanti rajasaha jaganya guna vrittashta ado gachanti tamasa. Translation. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the abominable mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. That's the verse there. And towards the end of the purport, Prabhupada says, there are no after just referring to that verse, he says, there are no contradictions in this conclusion. So that sentence is that's the conclusion. You just heard the conclusion. Those in the mode of goodness go to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion stay in the middle planets. Those in the mode of ignorance go down to the lower planets or animal life. That's the conclusion. And Prabhupada is saying there's no contradictions in this conclusion. Okay, and we're going to get back to that. That's because that's really pretty much the main point of the purport. But Prabhupada does say something interesting here, which in and of itself is not very important, but is interesting. And it's going to enable me to kind of make an analogy to lead on to the main point I'd like to make. So he points out here, he says, those in the mode of ignorance are placed in the society of animals, okay, or ghosts. We generally don't tend to think of ghosts as being in a society, right? At least I never have. Animals, perhaps, the society of birds of a feather flock together, dogs, certain animals hang out in groups, so there's like a society, you could say. But ghosts? I mean, I generally tend to think of ghosts as like a one-off kind of a ethereal kind of being. Correct. Yeah, and we're going to now, and what I'm going to, it's exactly correct. Okay. Well, that's exactly correct. And now I'm going to read a brief excerpt from a lecture that Sariputta Das gave here in Los Angeles in this, I believe it was December of 1992, about 30 years ago, where he actually touched upon this point. And as I said, it's very interesting. Okay, so he goes here. He says, ghostly species. Because in the Bhagavatam, if you recall in your readings, sometimes you hear ghosts, and sometimes you hear Prabhupada use that phrase, ghostly species. So he says, ghostly species. One should make a distinction between ghost and ghostly species. A ghost, by definition, is the subtle body of someone who has died, but because of their karmic complications, they are not able to receive another gross body, and furthermore, they are attached to a particular material situation in this world, so they tend to haunt some particular location within this world. It is said that a person in this situation desires material enjoyment, but they are not granted the material body with which they can obtain these material enjoyments, so it is a situation of great suffering. The ghost is a body of mind, intelligence, and false ego. Typically, the ghosts are not able to do very much. They might be able to influence a person's mind slightly, and on some occasions, if they can gain access to a person's energy due to some physical defect in the person, they can throw some things around and create disturbances, which accounts for hauntings and poltergeists. Now he goes on to say, but there are also ghostly species, and I think that's what Prabhupada's referring to here in this purport, because he says, when somebody's in the mode of ignorance, they're placed in the society of animals or ghosts. They're placed in one of these ghostly species. And so now Sariputta will go on to give us an insight into what that's all about. He says, ghostly species are, and there's quite a listing of them in the Bhagavatam. These consist of bhutas. Bhuta actually is the general name, but bhutas, pretas, pisachas, vitalin, kusmandalas, yatudanas, and it goes on. The list goes on. There's a lot of them. There's 400,000 human-like species in the material universe. So, and bhutas comprise a lot of them. So it says here, there are different lists in the Bhagavatam describing these different beings. These, however, are species, or no, it's societies. It is not that when you die and you're just in your subtle body, you can become one of these. And it's not like automatically no. He says you can become one of these as a result of your karma. As you can, if that's your karma, you can be placed in one of these ghostly species societies, but it's not like an automatic. It says, but these are organized societies. He actually says it. These are organized societies with definite bodily forms. Their bodies are more subtle than the bodies we have, but they may contain some mixture of gross elements also. Typically, they also possess different mystic powers. And as far as that goes, and I'll mention something about, well, I'll read the rest of it. However, they are not as powerful as the Upadevas. That's described in different shastras. So the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam says that these beings have their dwelling places 100 yojanas above the highest altitude to which the birds can fly, large birds. That's about 800 miles up. So that's in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam. There's that description, as it says here, 800 miles above where the birds, the big birds could fly. You have these planets where these ghostly species, they inhabit them. Above that, there's the Upadevas, and the Upadevas are just that. Upa means below, like Upananda. Upananda, he was the younger brother. So Upa means below devas. They're like the Kinnaras, Apsaras, Gandharvas, Vijayadharas, they're Upadevas. And it's described in some Shastras they have about 3/4 of the mystic powers of the Devas. And then above the Upadevas are the Devas. That's some idea of how the universe is. And of course then there's the subterranean heavenly planets, like, was it Atala, Tala, Tala, Malatala, you know, all those talas, which I can't remember. But they're quite often what happens there is that there's the Daityas, the demons, and when they engage in warfare with the demigods, and they're driven down to those lower planetary systems. So that's there too. But anyway, the point is that, and it's interesting here, all of this is invisible. It's invisible to us. You know, we experience the earth with human beings and animals, and we don't experience these, ghostly species, at least not directly. It's not something that's accepted as part of reality, or what's Upadevas and Devas, you know. But that's the Vedic universe. Most of it is invisible to us, okay? But because something's invisible to us doesn't mean it's not real, okay? So in the same way, Prabhupada's saying here, about this principle here that he referred to from the Bhagavad Gita, that those in the mode of goodness go to the higher planets, those in the mode of passion stay in the middle planets, those in the mode of ignorance go down. He's saying there's no contradiction to this conclusion. No contradiction in what sense? No contradiction to reality. In other words, it's like another way of saying, it's a figure of speech almost. He's saying, this is reality. There's no contradiction in this conclusion. This is reality. This is how it works. And we may not, be able to directly perceive it, but that's the fact. That's how it's working. Right? Now, I'll just read one little thing here, and then I'll give an example of my own that I thought of to illustrate this point. This is Sariputta. This is from a book he wrote called Alien Identities, and he gives a very interesting. He gives an interesting definition or insight into what a mode of nature is, because we're hearing about the modes of nature. So what the heck is a mode of nature anyway? And we're so used to hearing about it, the modes of nature, the modes of nature, the modes of nature, from the first day you join. But what is a mode of nature exactly? Well, this is what Sariputta says. One misconception that can arise from the word goodness, he's talking about the mode, referring to the mode of good, is that the three modes have something to do with ethical distinctions between good and bad. He goes, this is not correct, and it would be better to think of the modes, or called gunas or ropes, as basic psychological programs that can be recognized by their characteristic behavioral symptoms. Sattva could be also translated as pure beingness, and it refers to the introspective recognition of one's existence as a conscious self. Rajas can be translated as colored, reddened, or dusty, and it refers to the contamination of one's consciousness by passionate desires. Tamas literally means darkness, and it refers to the tendency of the conscious beings to fall into deep illusion. So that makes a lot of sense to me, and I kind of take that as that's the way to understand. Archit is shaking his head yes, so I feel a lot more comfortable. That's the way to understand the modes of material nature. Okay, so Prabhupada's saying there's no contradiction to this conclusion about what happens. You were situated in a particular mode of nature, but we don't see it. Just like we don't see the ghostly species, we don't see the Upadevas, we don't see the Devas, and this is like something we don't see, but it's how it works. I'll give you an example. Like this is a hypothetical situation. A man goes into a department store, let's say Nordstrom's or some fancy department store, and he just happens to have a key, a skeleton key that opens up how they keep the expensive stuff locked up behind the cases. So he has the key for that. So he goes in, and when nobody's looking, there's no sales person around or anything like that, he uses his key, he opens up one of those glass cases, and he takes out a few pieces of expensive jewelry, and he just sticks them in his bag, closes it back up again, and walks out of the store. And he just walks out, and he's fine. Nobody detects him. There's no anything. There's no person there. So off he goes. A while later, time later, a few days later or whatever, one of the employees notices, hey, wow, there's a few pieces of expensive jewelry missing. And So they go, oh, let's check the cameras. So they go back into the security room there, and they look at the cameras for those that period of time where from the time they knew it was there to the time they discovered it was missing. And sure enough, they see on the camera there's this guy coming up, taking out his key and opening it up and putting the pieces of jewelry in his bag and then walking off. So they know. Then they turn that image, they turn that film over to the police, and the police put it on, give it to a detective, and the detective does some research, and he finds, they find that guy's a picture in their files. He's a criminal, and they've got him before for this. Anyway, they track him down, and when they finally get to they find the guy, they locate the guy, and the police come and says, "You're under arrest." And he says, "What are you talking about?" He says, "You're under arrest for stealing the jewelry." And he says, "I didn't do it. What evidence do you have?" And they go, "Well, we got you on the camera." So as I said, this is an example of that I can. So in the same way, Super Soul is there. We're on camera. Just like that guy. He thought he was getting away with it, but he's on camera. And that's evidence. They saw him right there in black, white, or in color, whatever the films are these days. So in the same way, Super Soul is aware of everything we do. So, somebody might say, what are these, you're talking about modes of nature, and it's all invisible. Well, yeah, it's invisible to us, but just like it was invisible, that guy didn't understand that he was being observed on the camera. So in the same way, the conditioned souls don't know that everything we're doing is being witnessed by Krishna, by the Super Soul. And, according to how we exercise our free will, it's all there on the camera. Krishna knows, and it's recorded, and he will award us accordingly, according to what we deserve, right? So, as devotees, we want to use this opportunity, since we're on camera, we want to use this opportunity to elevate ourselves to a higher level of existence, ultimately to go back to Godhead. So that's explained. There's a nice explanation of how to do that in the Bhagavad Gita here, in the 13th chapter. There's an interesting verse in the Krishna talks about the process of knowledge, and he goes humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of evil and birth and death, old age and disease, etc. It goes on. And so we're supposed to be trying to develop these good qualities. Now, there's two interesting points Prabhupada makes very early in the purport here. One is that this is not just like a list of how to become a good person. Well, it is. I mean, if you try to do these things, you will be becoming. It's more than that. Prabhupada says, this process of knowledge is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activity. But actually, this is the real process of knowledge. See, so it's transcendental. It's not just like some mundane prescription to how to be a good person. It's more than that. But then he goes on to say, if one accepts this process, then there's the possibility of approaching the absolute truth. And then he repeats, this is not the interaction of the 24 elements as described before. This is actually the means to get out of the entanglement of those elements. And then he goes on to say something really interesting, a couple sentences down. He says, the process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So if one does not approach, or is not able to approach, the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 19 items are of no particular value. So I thought, wow, that's a pretty powerful statement right there. So it makes it clear what our, what's the word? Hierarchy is. At the top of the hierarchy of important things on your to-do list, the top of the list should be to try to develop unalloyed devotional service to the Lord, because that's Prabhupada says here, if one does not approach or is not able to, let me repeat that again. The process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. If one does not approach that, or is not able to approach, that transcendental service of the Lord. The other 19 items are of no particular value. So that's how important it is. So that's what we should be striving for. And I forgot one little prop I was going to bring, my phone, which had a couple other references on it, but so I'll just do it from memory. But so ideally, we want to be striving for unalloyed devotional service, and but in the 8th canto, I think it's chapter 2, text 30, Prabhupada says something interesting. There was a situation where he had a sannyasi disciple that had difficulty and fell down. And Prabhupada wrote in a purport, the story was about, the chapter's the crisis of Gajendra the elephant. So in the purport, the translations were describing how Gajendra got attacked by the crocodile, and he was in the water, and they fought for 1,000 years. The fight went on, battle went on for 1,000 years. So, it was making the point how the crocodile, because he was in his element, he was able to get strength. He was, I guess, after he finished biting for a while, he would run off and eat something or whatever and come back, and when he got a little stronger, he'd bite him, and before Gajendra could get out of the water, he'd bite him again. The details aren't given. The exact description isn't given, but it was making the point that the crocodile was in his element, he was getting stronger, whereas the elephant was not in his element, he was getting weaker. Anyway, so Prabhupada says in the purport that he makes the point that everybody has to be in a situation, which they feel they have. The soldiers in the Krishna conscious movement have to be in the situation where they feel sensual power, and they feel, sound mind and body. You have to be materially ready to go, to fight. And Prabhupada says, and that's not going to be the same for everybody. What constitutes a normal condition of life is going to be different from person to person. But so he makes the point that, and he specifically says, because he was kind of preaching to that disciple through that purport, that if the sannyasa ashram isn't suitable, then okay, go to the grihastha ashram. But then the bottom line was, don't give up the fighting and go away. See, so Prabhupada, so in other words, ideally, we want to go for unalloyed devotional service, but if in the meantime we're not, that's a pretty lofty goal, and if we're not able to, very immediately achieve that, okay, well, be on the platform of alloyed devotional service for the time being, until you can get to the, as Prabhupada makes that point, don't give up the fighting and go away. Ideally, if one, it would have been better if it could continue on like that. But if you can't, once again, in the hierarchy of principles, it seems like Prabhupada's setting that up as, if not the highest principle, certainly a very high principle. Don't give up the fighting and go away. So that's, a very important consideration, something to keep in mind. And something that I do that helps me stay encouraged to keep fighting, because to do that, you need encouragement. If you're going to be in a fight, you can't be, have a defeatist mentality. You can't, if you're demoralized, how can you fight? You need something to kind of keep you inspired. So this is what I use. A couple things. One is that, we have the instructions of our spiritual master, and that takes a lot of, that will cover a lot of ground. In other words, just from the different instructions we receive from Prabhupada, and they're numerous, and we get them through his books and his lectures and like that. So we know what to do in a lot of situations, pretty much all the time. But if there's a gap, if there's something that's not covered, well, here's something that helps. This is a helpful bit of information. From the 2nd canto. In the 2nd canto, 2nd chapter, text 36, Prabhupada says in the purport, every living entity has its intelligence, and this intelligence, being the direction of some higher authority, is just like a father giving direction to his son. And then Prabhupada goes on in the next sentence to say that that higher authority, who is present, residing within every individual living being, is the super self. Well, that's Krishna. See? So that higher authority is Krishna. So Krishna is there, and he's just like the Father giving intelligence to the Son. So, we're trying to be his devotees, so, definitely he's going to give us intelligence, how to act. If you're in some situation where you just can't, you can't think of what's the exact thing, what the exact instruction that Prabhupada gave that covers this, well, pray to Krishna. Because according to this, Krishna is within our heart as the super self, and he's just like a father giving direction to his son, and people are trying to be his devotees, or like the good sons, so we should get intelligence from Krishna. And Prabhupada actually says to do that. This is not my sentiment or speculation. Prabhupada says further on in the purport, he says, so if we stick to our determination of trying to be devotees, and here it comes, and pray for the mercy of the director of intelligence, sitting within the same bodily tree, like a bird sitting within another bird. But that phrase there, pray for the mercy of the director of intelligence. So there's an instruction from Prabhupada. Pray for the mercy of the director of intelligence. That's Krishna. And Krishna will give us intelligence how to deal with any situation, immediate or extended, that we're being confronted with. Because let's face it, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but devotional service is challenging. This is a challenge. We've taken on a challenge trying to become Hare Krishna devotees. I mean, if you do the math, they say there's 7 billion people in the world. Let's just, for argument's sake, let's say 4 billion of those are adults between the age of 18 and 65. Okay? So, out of those 4 billion, how many people are there that know about this or believe in these ideas? It's how many people out of 4 billion, would you say 4 million? I don't think there's 4 million quote unquote devotees. Let's say 400,000. So that's, once again, this is just ballpark figures. But if there's 400,000 people who believe in these ideas that are being presented in these books, that's only 1% of 1%. That's 1/10,000th, which works out to 1% of 1% of the population. Then of those 400,000, how many are actually chanting 16 rounds and following the 4 regular principles? Maybe 40,000? Is that that's a generous figure, right? 40,000? And of those 40,000, how many are really dedicated to pushing on the mission? 4,000? And of those 4,000, how many are living embodiments of the philosophy, acharyas? 400? So, it comes out to like 1 in 100 million, something like. In other words, that's why Krishna says in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Bahunam Janmanam Ante. Well, he says 2 things. Manushana, he says, out of many thousands among men. Actually, in the lecture I heard Prabhupada say, actually, Krishna said that 5,000 years ago. He said, now it's million Eshu. Prabhupada said that. It's not thousand Eshu anymore. It's not out of many thousands among men. It's out of many millions among men, one may endeavor perfection. And then he goes on to say, just a little bit further in that chapter, and after many, many births, one who's actually, so it's a really big challenge to try to be a devotee of Krishna. We've traveled a long existential distance. It's a big challenge. So we need, we need this encouragement. Anyway, so this is the last point I want to make. So pray to Krishna for the intelligence, and just like the Christians, they have their John 3:16. I'm not from a Christian background, but it's so prevalent that even I know that one. How's it go? God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, and anybody who believes in him will have eternal life, something to that effect. So they really take shelter of that. So just like they got that, I have this. Okay, this is my John 3:16. Prabhupada says here in the purport, I have Bhagavad Gita 9:18. They have their John 3:16, but I got Bhagavad Gita 9:18. And this is what I take shelter of. Prabhupada says, one should directly approach Krishna, for that will save time and energy. For example, if there's a possibility of going to the top of a building by the help of an elevator, Why should one go by the staircase step by step? And then he goes, everything is resting on Krishna's energy. Therefore, without Krishna's shelter, nothing can exist. Krishna is the supreme ruler because everything belongs to him and everything exists on his energy. Krishna, being situated in everyone's heart, is the supreme witness. That's an important sentence for me. And then he goes on to say, Krishna is the ultimate goal of shelter, and therefore one should take shelter of Krishna either for protection or for annihilation of his distress. Well, when I read that, I always think, I'll take both. I'll take both. And then it goes and says here, Krishna is the supreme living entity. And since Krishna is the source of our generation, or the Supreme Father, and this is the one that really hits me, no one can be a better friend than Krishna, nor can anyone be a better well-wisher. So just like they're taking solace, they remember that phrase, they remember that passage, whatever it is, John 3. I remember this. I keep thinking about this. No one can be a better friend than Krishna, nor can anyone be a better well-wisher. And when I put the whole thing together, when I put this together with the fact that Krishna is there, as I said, Krishna's a witness. Krishna is being situated in everyone's heart as a supreme witness. So I just I remember that, and I remember that Prabhupada saying, "Pray for the mercy of the director of intelligence." And I just feel like, okay, this is my hope. This is my shelter. This is my refuge. Krishna's my best friend. He's my best well-wisher. He's in my heart. He's got me this far, and despite the fact that I'm not qualified to even be where I am, but Krishna, I'm not qualified to ask, pray to you, ask for you for more help, but I'm desperate. So I'm praying, upon the strength of what I've heard from my spiritual master, that you're the best friend, you're the best well-wisher, you're in my heart, you know that where I'm at and so please help me. And that gives me encouragement. It gives me hope that, because as I said, we need this. You need to feel that, to fight. Prabhupada says, don't give up the fighting and go away. So this is something that helps me not give up the fighting and go away. This remembrance of what Prabhupada's words said: Krishna is the best friend. Krishna is our best friend. Krishna is our best well-wisher. And I just take shelter of that and pray like that, pray on that, and keep going. And it seems to be helpful. So I'll stop there. Does anybody have any question?
Thank you, Prabhu. So I totally agree with that example that you just gave, that praying to the super self, pray to the intelligence. But my question to you will be, wouldn't be also be just to make sure that intelligence, because we are super conditioned, that sometimes we think we might be cheated. Oh, Krishna is telling me to do this. Mm-hmm. But actually, because we have rooted desires that you still want your desires to be fulfilled. And you say, oh, Krishna is confirming this, because I've been praying to Krishna. So my question to you, wouldn't be safe just to make sure, as we have a standard in the Vaishnava philosophy, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, to back it up?
Yeah, that's a good point. Bhakti Amil was telling me that that devotee who was here the other day, what's his name again? Sorry? Padmanabh, yeah, he gave a brahmachari class before he left, and he made the point that if you want to make it as a brahmachari, you have to have a mentor. You have to have somebody that you can, take shelter of, reveal your mind to, and just and get guidance from. That's very important. So I think that's, in addition to praying like that, one should pray like that. But in addition to that, you can, check. Have somebody that you have a lot of respect for, a lot of faith in. You feel that they're more advanced than you, and you reveal your mind to them, and just hey, this is how I'm thinking. This is how I'm feeling. Is that right? Get feedback from somebody that you feel is more advanced than you. That's a good idea, because you're not always going to have access to your guru. You know, it's some gurus have thousands of disciples, so you're not always going to have direct access to your guru. And the Shastra, well, as you said, you could be reading the Shastra and then just kind of, you know, misinterpreting it in your own mind. So sadhu, you know, have somebody that's there that you can confide in and get guidance from. I think that's a really good thing as well. Question? Yeah.
He was reading this verse from Bhagavad Gita about different qualities we have to acquire. But also you mentioned that doesn't have meaning in purport if you don't develop analog devotion service. This is what you said.
Yeah.
So can you explain a little bit more about, is it disconnected with, you know, to come to the level of Brahma Bhuta stage? In that time devotion service starts, so everything before that doesn't have meaning. So it doesn't make sense for me. As we try to do so many things, maybe under most material nature, Krishna is looking to that. So how I understand this statement, and doesn't if you don't enter.
It says here, if one is not able to approach the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 19 items are of no particular value.
No material value. No material value.
No particular value. So it's you know, Prabhupada's trying to emphasize the point that the most important thing is to develop the devotional service. Like Rupa Goswami said, this is maybe helpful. Yena tena prakadena manak krishna navesayat sarva vidina sevasur eteor eva kinkanam. That in the beginning one should find out a way to fix the mind upon Krishna, to be engaged in devotional service, and then the ability to follow the other rules and regulations will develop from within. See, so that's it's kind of setting the priorities there. The most important thing is be engaged in devotional service. 1,728 Hare Krishna Mahamantras every day. That's 16 rounds. Follow the four good principles. Try to be fully engaged in service, and then be aware of these other qualities and try to develop them. But the main focus, our main emphasis is on following and trying to be fully engaged in devotional service. Mara, did you have a question? I'm sorry. Oh no, you don't. Okay. Okay. Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.